encampment there. The university setting the deadline with demonstrators to reach an agreement to dismantle the encampment that has led to some students feeling unsafe and threatened on campus. Those tents first popped up on Columbia's campus about a week ago, and so far, more than 100 protesters have been arrested. Some of the demonstrators have used these events to threaten and intimidate Jewish students. And the protests on Columbia's campus, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has now been prompted to visit the school, the Ivy League school. He'll be there later today. He will be meeting with Jewish students. He'll talk about, quote, the troubling rise of virulent anti-Semitism on America's college campuses. Those are his words. These protests have been happening across the country. Concerns for campus safety, top of mind as graduation gets closer. Commencement at Columbia and NYU, 3 weeks away, and some schools already changing their plans by not allowing banners or flags at some of the ceremonies. Some are canceling speeches by people not affiliated with the schools. Here to talk more about this developing situation is Zachary Marschall. He's the editor-in-chief of Campus Reforms, which has been reporting on anti-Semitism on college campuses for years. He's also an NYU alum. Good morning to you, Zachary. I appreciate you being here. Let's first talk about who these demonstrators are and their message. As you look at this situation on a number of campuses, how would you characterize what's happening?
This is a coordinated effort among Students for Justice in Palestine chapters, being led and cheered on by the national organization. They're working with Jewish Voices for Peace. And at many of these campuses, they are suspended. So they're unofficially organizing these tent encampments. And they are living out their utopian ideals that they learn from their professors, that utopian worldwide revolution is here if we just march for it. So this is a very organic process that reflects the leftist and very radical education they've been getting for decades now from these professors that push anti-Semitism into classrooms. This is not just individual campuses. The replications we're seeing across the country are happening because this is what's been going on in curriculum across the nation.
And the situation in the Middle East fueling what we're seeing, particularly in Gaza and the humanitarian concerns. Has the distinction been made in some of these demonstrations between pro-Palestinian peace seekers and those in support of Hamas, a terrorist organization?
I don't think it has. We have seen Yale University and NYU facilitate the arrest of multiple students, and Columbia even last weekend. And that's because all of these demonstrations that might start out with pro-Palestine or liberation-oriented language always end up being either pro-Hamas or anti-Jewish. We saw students at Columbia University physically bar Jewish students who are wearing yarmulkes from entering buildings. So, you have to ask those protesters, what is it about a Jewish person entering a building that has to do with what a country in Asia is currently doing in a war against Hamas?
Yeah,
it shows that there is slippage.
Yeah, and a number of different people involved in these demonstrations who have a different message. Was the right move from Columbia to move classes online?
No, and I think Columbia is an outlier here. I am going to surprise you, and I'm actually more optimistic than I might sound about the entire situation. But that's because we see NYU and Yale facilitating arrests, and that follows a pattern we're seeing in the last month. We've seen at Vanderbilt, University of Georgia, and Pomona College that these colleges are saying enough is enough. They're using suspensions, expulsions, and arrests to clamp down on these protesters. And Columbia right now is an outlier because Shafiq is running scared. It was very obvious from her testimony to Congress last week that she doesn't have the backbone to stand up to these protesters. So I'm not surprised that she's trying to accommodate them as her faculty and the Barnard College president are protesting against the suspensions.
There are students, there are faculty among these demonstrators, but there's also members of the general public. We don't know fully who else is involved. How difficult is it, a challenge for these schools to mitigate that part of it?
I don't really know if Columbia is even trying to do that. Campus Reform has been reporting that they're not allowing NYPD officers on premises, and Campus Reform has published photos and videos of activists who said that they sweet-talked guards into their campus. Also, there was a professor that President Shafiq said, she told Congress that he's no longer at the university, but he was right on the quad teaching students in these impromptu classes in the occupation.
Yeah, a tenured professor who called Hamas's actions on October 7th and the attack on Israel awesome. Zachary Marschall, I appreciate your time on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, a live look at the White House. President Biden is getting ready to speak